Become a leader in the emerging fintech space through NYU Stern's Master of Science in Fintech program. This one-year part-time program is designed for full-time working professionals who want to strengthen their fintech skills. To learn more, submit your resume for a candidacy review at stern.nyu.edu/msft-finovate.
Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. I'm joined today by Shannon Saccocia, who is the Chief Investment Officer of NB Private Wealth. Shannon, thank you so much for taking the time to connect with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I have to tell you, you're slightly different from most of the usual guests on this, and that you're coming from the private wealth space. But can you start by giving us a little bit of background on yourself and NB Private Wealth?
Sure. As mentioned, I'm Shannon Saccocia. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of NB Private Wealth. I've been here at NB Private Wealth for about a year and a half. I've been in the wealth management industry for over 20 years. And our firm is a private employee-owned national wealth management firm. We really focus on empowering our clients to meet their goals through an intersection of planning and investments, ensuring that the solution we create is both customized and competitive. We deliver that through experienced advisors, supported by experts in planning, and underpinned by our global investment management franchises. My background, again, has been pretty much entirely in the wealth management space, and I've really held almost every role within investment management in the wealth management space, but have also participated and onboarded a number of technology solutions over that time. So I have a little bit of a unique perspective from the CIO seat.
Yeah, no, I think it's we're going to get into that quite a bit here over the next 15 minutes or so. I think the first thing I want to do is get right into the differences between kind of the bank and credit union space and talk about some of the unique challenges that you face in private wealth. Can you go through some of those, maybe things that banks don't really need to worry about as much as you do?
Sure. So I think one of the major things is that not all private wealth firms are created the same. And we can talk about that from the way that we build portfolios and the advisors that we have. But I think most importantly, we have our own narrative. And so if you think about kind of the traditional construct of a banking relationship with a client, the terminology is fairly consistent. The way that information is presented is fairly consistent. And in the private wealth world, we really customize not only for our narrative, but also we customize it from a client perspective. So we work with families, individuals, foundations, and for each of those, they're really looking to have the information presented to them and the solution delivered to them in a way that aligns with their goals. Sometimes that's, from a values perspective. Sometimes they like to look at things in a very sort of quantitative and financial perspective. But really, it's not only the solutions that we deliver that are very customized, but the approach to working with those clients tends to be very customized, even, in a larger firm with a lot of different advisors. And so we have the onus is on us to make sure that everything that we do with that client reflects our narrative, but also is in alignment with the way that they see themselves from their perspective.
Yeah, I can see the difficulty of that balancing act. And obviously, this is an area where I think tech solutions can play a major role. What types of fintech tools are you looking at the moment to kind of help you get where you need to be?
Well, one of the things that we're increasingly focused on is what does an advisor delivery look like, and what are our clients really looking for from an advisor in their private wealth management relationship? I think if we go back 10 years or so, one of the things that we were really thinking about was this disruption from the robo advisor, if you will. How do we compete as humans when clients are able to really access a lot of those investment management solutions, asset management solutions through, through an online mechanism, right? And what we've realized is that clients have really resoundingly said, we appreciate our advisor. We appreciate the time with our advisor. So instead, I feel like we've swung the other way from a pendulum perspective, where now we're really looking at tools that can allow the advisor to spend more time with their clients. They can spend more time in conversation with their clients, and then they can spend more time on the back of those interactions, really thinking about delivering solutions for their clients rather than spending a lot of time, preparing reports, pulling information together, looking at facts about the relationship. So I think what we're looking for is really trying to better harness that, create more efficiency in the advisor's time so that they're not worried about spending those additional hours with their clients. They're really worried about, how do I deepen those relationships, and less about how am I going to get all this work done when I get back to the office, in terms of just, managing the portfolios, estate and tax planning, all of those things that our advisors are responsible for.
Yeah, and I think this is really along a kind of common theme in fintech, which is helping people do the parts of their job that they're best at, right? At a really high level, a lot of the tools that we see are designed to take some of this onerous work off of people's plates and let them focus in on those things like your advisors have, where they're trying to really be as personal as they can be, take as much care of their clients as they can. One question that I had as you're talking through this is, how do your clients' needs differ from what you might find at a typical financial institution? Do you find that there's a different type of service, or maybe a different type of quality of service that they need?
Absolutely. I think especially with the clients that, we work with, ultra high net worth family office clients, they're really looking at their advisor as a provider, not only of an explicit service like investment management or estate tax and wealth planning. They're looking at us to really be that purveyor of simplicity. So a lot of the solutions that we might put forth for them, particularly, as their wealth grows, are increasingly complex. And that's not just on the investment side, but it's with a lot of the planning work that we do as well. Yet they want that work to be done. They want us to be able to provide the best possible solution to meet their needs, but they want that to be presented in a way that, again, aligns with what they're looking at, what they're considering, what they're thinking about. The other thing is that I think there is a perception, perhaps, and I think it's really an inaccurate perception, that ultra high net worth and family office clients aren't as sophisticated, and they don't need the sort of quantitative metrics that an institution would be looking for. And in many cases, that's just not correct. They're looking to ensure that they're getting that same both qualitative and quantitative output, so that they can assess whether, we as an advisor are, really delivering the level of service that they would be looking for. And so in many cases, a lot of this depends on the client. So not every client is looking for this depth of quantitative metrics. Not every client is looking for, the estate tax and wealth planning that we're providing. But we know that we have clients that may use one or all of those things in making that decision about our performance. And so being able to pull those different levers at any given time and in a way that's aligned with that desired experience, I think is the challenge that we face on a day-to-day basis, particularly in this client segment that we operate in.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting piece as well. And I think, again, this is a slightly different take on a common challenge, which is your customers want different things, but you have to be prepared to give them everything and let them decide how much they actually want to take from that, which I think is really interesting. Become a leader in the emerging fintech space through NYU Stern's Master of Science in Fintech program. This is a one-year part-time program divided into 1 online and 6 on-site modules that take place in New York and in rotating global locations. The MSFT program is designed for experienced working professionals who want to strengthen their fintech skills or transition to fintech leadership positions. The final application deadline for the MSFT class of 2026, beginning May 2025, is March 1st. GMAT and GRE scores are generally not required. To learn more about the program, submit your resume for candidacy review at stern.nyu.edu/msft-finovate. Let's bring it back now towards the fintech side of things. Are there any tech initiatives that you've been able to implement that you've kind of already seen that have been effective? Anything that you want to mention or potentially even brag about here?
Sure. I think one of the things that seems very basic, but I would tell you is much more complex in execution than in ideation is around client reporting. And reporting can be anything as simple as just, here's your cash flow statement on a quarterly basis to, again, an incorporation of all of those metrics that I talked about before, transition analysis, tax analysis. How are we performing, versus peers or benchmarks? How are we performing, or how would we perform in certain types of scenarios? And so being able to pull together reporting that can be aligned with the way the client looks at their wealth, being aligned with the client in terms of the level of transparency and detail that they're looking for. We're really proud of being able to roll out solutions that include, also, a client portal so they can access that information at their convenience. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, this idea of being able to provide institutional analytics. And so, for us, it's being able to utilize technology to provide the types of analytics that a very large research team would be needed historically. So, we have the benefit of an immense amount of data that's available to us. A lot of that can be analyzed and evaluated in different ways. And so for us, being able to put in what I would say is an institutional quality analytics system, it helps us in our prospecting, it helps us in our oversight, and it also helps us to make better portfolio management decisions. And so really thinking about back to construction and back to results, being able to put in those types of systems within a private wealth construct, I think is just incredibly meaningful. And I think it speaks to our desire to continue to push the envelope in terms of innovation and delivering that extraordinary client experience.
Yeah, so I mean that's all impressive, but now we have to entertain the phrase "the past is prologue." So let's put all of that behind us now, as important as it undoubtedly is, and let's talk about the future. As you look towards the horizon, what do you think are the biggest potential gains out there for firms like yours from the fintech space?
I mean, we talked about it earlier, just continuing to provide more time for our advisors to spend with their clients. I also think that, from an operational perspective, there's a significant amount of stops along the way from the moment where you meet with a prospect to 3 or 4 years down the line when you're reviewing their performance and their relationship on an ongoing basis. And so I think one of the things we're looking at is there technology to help us kind of streamline that experience, less touches, more accuracy, more automation in terms of getting from that yes to I'm still really happy to be here. And oh, by the way, I've got some additional assets elsewhere that I'd love for you to consider. So I think just finding those points along the way, and whether that's synthesizing data from a number of different types of sources for aggregation to creating workflows where, cross-functional teams can work together much more effectively to, being able to leverage, AI to be able to, take some of the work that we're doing manually, especially as it relates to things like trust documentation, being able to make that a more efficient process so that we can just shorten the response time for our clients so that we can really spend time from an advisor perspective with the expertise being spent really thinking about coming up with solutions for their problems rather than just determining the problem, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think here's a question for all the innovators who are listening to this. Do you feel like there are any opportunities out there that not enough people in the fintech space are working on yet? Are there things where you want to see more activity than what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we would really like to see more of is just an acknowledgement that the sort of one-stop shop is really difficult for many firms, particularly firms with larger, more complex businesses. So what we're really looking for is to come to us with kind of your lead use case. We are really good about creating a solution for this particular pain point. And most importantly, perhaps, is we understand that you likely have some legacy systems that we're going to need to work with and integrate with and talk to. And we stand ready to do that. And we've done that with other people. So I think for us, it's really thinking about, what are these manual processes, understanding that I can't make everything come in a nice data feed that integrates very easily into my system from a lot of different sources. How do we take that information in? The other thing that I'd really, sort of acknowledge is that we are in a business where things are becoming increasingly complex. We talk about the democratization of investments. So that implies, more separately managed accounts, more alternative private market vehicles for clients. All of that creates additional complexity in terms of the implementation from a portfolio perspective. Being able to create solutions that understand that clients are going to have a lot of different accounts that are going to have different mandates with different types of underlying investments, and they need to all be fed into this, magical reporting engine to make sense for the client. I think coming in and really leading with a use case where you help us along those pain points and focus on that, I think is where, wealth management is particularly in need. There isn't going to be one size fits all for a business like ours, for instance, but there's a lot of things that I think, we could use enhanced efficiency and being able to provide those solutions at those points of pain, I think is where fintech can really provide us with some lift.
So anybody from the innovation side of it, just go back a minute, listen to that again, take some notes. And as I say that, I'll go ahead and say we are coming up at the end of our time here, and I want to just get your perspective on kind of the bigger picture. Let's zoom out for this last question. What big picture changes do you think are coming in the private wealth space over the next 5 or 10 years? Is there going to be a shift in the industry? How will the industry shift? What are you expecting?
I think we're expecting, continuing growth in the industry. And I think, one of the things that we're, very focused on is we're bringing on a client base that is more technology fluent. They appreciate and frankly expect the delivery of service, while that initial touch point or ongoing touch point is through the advisor. They don't anticipate that we will need a significant amount of time to turn around a data deliverable to them. And so I think with this next gen component, we're really pushing from a private wealth industry perspective broadly that we need to meet those investors where they are. And those expectations are going to be very high. They want to work with an advisor because we provide the expertise and guidance, but they don't want to work with an advisor and forego some of that simplicity, transparency, and efficiency that they're used to in other aspects of their life. And so we want to be just as efficient as other parts of the financial services industry, but because we want to be able to reach this next generation of investors and show them the value that we can provide above and beyond those, I would say, technology-led solutions.
Yeah, well, and I think we do have to leave it here, but there's been a lot of really good stuff to unpack here. I want to thank you for sharing your perspective. And again, it is slightly different from what we typically hear. So I hope it's been valuable for everybody listening. And Shannon, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.